Hello and good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another EWMG meeting. Today it has been joint promoted with the Chartered Institute of Waste Management and also the IOSH Public Services Network. And I believe, or not fully sure, that I'm hoping that members in the Southeast branch who are based in Kent of IOSH have also joined us today. A few bits of information on where the EWMG is right now. I'll use this as Chair's prerogative. First of all, please go to the, or if you haven't linked in, please link in with the IOSH EWMG page. It's quite simple. You'll find us there, and we do share conversational topics and discuss various issues that are going on. Now, the only quick notice I've got, two quick notices. One is 2 weeks' time, we have the presentation on sleepers in bins in waste collection, which is a national HSE priority area. And that will be, we'll have the president of IOSH, Jimmy Quinn, joining us briefly for that session there. And those of you in the EWMG group, and if you go to the LinkedIn page and you go to the IOSH EWMG webpage, the microsite, there is a questionnaire we're asking all IOSH members to contribute to. If you're not an IOSH member and want to have a look at it, you can do. We want to find out the roles people have got with the title environment in their job title, with health and safety on there, and where they sit and what their background is. So we need that feedback to actually determine the structure of the group and how environment fits in with the IOSH brand. So today, without any further delay, I'm very, very pleased to welcome today two speakers. The main speaker is Paldeep Bhatti, who's the Kent Resource Partnership Manager, talking about collaborative working. But before that, we're very, very lucky. We've managed to get the president of the CIWM, Trevor Nicol, to join us. Now, the IOSH is looking to engage better with the CIWM, and hopefully a member of the CIWM, sorry, one member of the IOSH EWMG group can sit and liaise with their health and safety group, which I think will be great for collaborative working amongst the organisations. Trevor, for his sins, according to his out of office or his office signature, head of Greater Cambridgeshire Shared Waste Services and head of environment for South Cambridgeshire District Council. I think your role's a bit higher than that in many ways in what you're doing. You do a bit more than just be head of, don't you, Trevor? So it's over to you, and I'm really pleased to welcome you.
Thank you very much for inviting me today. Just want to, so yes, I run a reasonably large shared waste service in Cambridgeshire, is at my day job, but my role as president of Chartered Institute of Waste Management is about trying to represent the CIWM, but actually try to raise the profile about what we do. And I think working with IOSH is a great sort of opportunity, as my principal role in my day job is to ensure that I send a couple of hundred staff out and I bring a couple hundred staff back in safely. And if they can collect some bins, that's a bonus. So it is a case of, I think everything we do has to have that safety first basis. But just to give you a little bit more detail about CIWM. So CIWM has just under 6,000 members, both in the UK and abroad. So our mission is, as the professional body for waste management, our mission is to actually make sure that we're using or we're influencing, informing, inspiring sustainable management of resources and waste. And I think the key word of resources is key now, rather than that idea of waste. So there's lots of elements we do. So we are trying to encourage more people in the sort of resources handling sort of industries actually into CIWM, and actually there's lots of people out there whose first role may be sort of safety officers, but actually tying those into sort of the professional waste management industry is really strong and really important as well. So what we try to do as a charter body is actually to get that high level of knowledge, making sure that we've got professional chartered members, and we've moved those to chartered resource and waste managers. It is actually about networking and sharing. So events like this is vitally important that we talk to each other, we share our experiences. and we get those activities out there. So either that's in the good old days when you had real meetings, or nowadays when it's all done behind a screen. So what we're saying, we'll say we're looking forward to do closer links, and I think we've been working very closely with IOSH in the past, but and we have people who are members of both. But I think as both organisations is trying to get those plights out there. So whether it's about how we can work better in partnership as the discussion today, or other safety critical things like people are rough sleepers in bins, it's how we get those messages across and how we make sure that all our staff are aware of those. So CRWM is available for people to join at various levels. So whether that's at a chartered level or coming through to a fellow, but we also have an associate level as well for those people who may not have all the elements that's required to become chartered. As an organisation, we also have about 250 businesses and other organisations that are affiliated with us, so so might share that experience. So if it's something that you think doesn't quite fit in for you personally, but you think your business or organisation fits in, we'd be delighted to have that conversation with you to make sure that we can raise that awareness. And I think in the UK, resources and waste, with the new strategy, or I suppose the new strategy is not new now, it's launched in 2018, but as that comes through with the Environment Bill, what hopefully should be agreed next year, and moving through to the changes of what we will have as local authorities, but also all waste management in the UK will be changing a lot over the next few years. And I think it's how we embrace that, how we ensure the activities and what we do are done in a safe manner and an effective manner, both for sort of using resources, but also making sure that they go back into material. So without taking much more, just want to thank the opportunity to speak today and highlight a bit about CRWM, and I'm really looking forward to the closer links that we can forge over the next year or so with IOSH, making sure that we link activities and events to sort of get that message out there and make sure that those common threads that we both organisations have are very clear and strong. Thank you.
Thanks very much indeed, Trevor. It's, from a personal point of view, it was great to represent IOSH at one of your AGMs and annual dinners, I think it would have been in London. Great organisation, great people, and you have got the uniqueness of, you're not like the CIPD, 150,000 members. You are professional, small, and yet you cover a huge space with a relatively small number of members. And I think that makes it really welcoming and engaging. And I would ask people, anybody in the EWMG who wants to engage more with the Institute of CRWM, please check out the website. I think it will be a very good move for your careers as well. That's not a free advert, it's from personal opinion. And that flags on, I think, the waste, the concept of waste in the UK, or resource management, I think it is. Is there a potential change to your title of your institute with resource management, not waste management, the phrase?
I think we quite like using the words CIWM at the moment. I think that's a discussion that needs to come out there. So we now are chartered resources and waste managers. So change is always good. So I'm not saying we wouldn't rule it out. There's nothing planned at the moment. But yeah, we have to remember this isn't waste. This is a resource, and we need to make sure we keep using it the best we can.
And this nicely fits in from our start of our lectures. Our first lunchtime lecture was Stuart Wagdon from the Open University talking about sustainable landfill mining. So again, we're not just about net zero in terms of waste. We're actually using up more than we're throwing away, almost as a culture for a country, and that, or for a planet rather, because I think the concept is global.
Yeah, and
Trevor,
I think
really appreciate that.
Yeah, and I think they say looking forward to do more together with IOSH.
Thanks very much indeed, Trevor. Look, if you can hang on to ask questions of Paldeep later, appreciate it. But I know you've got a massive maxed out timetable. So at this point, I'll say thank you very much. And you and I will catch up again sometime soon. Thank you. Paldeep, can you let yourself be seen? Hello, Paldeep. Paldeep Bhatti, gentleman I've worked with a number of years ago, 2015, 16. Great grunter team down in Kent Resource Partnership. Paldeep, over to you. The floor is yours.
Brilliant. Thank you, David, for that introduction, and for allowing me to spend half an hour or so to provide a bit of a presentation to you and this particular group. So I first start off with an introduction. My name is Paldeep Bhatti. I head up something known as the Kent Resource Partnership. If you're not aware as to what the Kent Resource Partnership, it's the councils on my screen there, the 13 councils across Kent. And essentially, those 13 councils across Kent, there's 12 of those councils. They're known as what is known as WCAs, so Waste Collection Authorities, and then the county council at the bottom right hand side is known as the WDA, which is the Waste Disposal Authority. So based on those two tiers, what's required is a partnership approach, and this is the approach that the Kent have taken. And what my presentation essentially is going to be looking to do is showcase a little bit of what we do across Kent, how we've worked together, how we've fallen along the lines as what David and Trevor has mentioned, turn the concept around waste to resource. We were previously known as the Kent Waste Partnership, and I think around 2013 we changed our name to Kent Resource Partnership because we recognised that change needed to be had. So, like I said, I'll got a couple of slides here just to run through with regards to the partnership, and welcome any questions at the end. I'll start off with the reason as to why we have a partnership. There's a legal reason. As I mentioned, there's that two-tier approach across local authorities. And as part of the Waste Emissions Trading Act, there's a requirement to have something known as a joint municipal waste management strategy. Kent, so following that, the Kent had put something in place quite a few years ago, around 2005-6, I think it was, in terms of our own strategy. And then since then, it's been refreshed probably 2 or 3 times over that period. And essentially, it binds the councils together. So essentially, councils aren't taking forward changes to their service that which might negatively impact the disposal authority and vice versa. So there's a commitment there to work together, but we've probably taken it a step further in terms of a partnership, and that outlined below there are just some of the reasons as to what we've done, or some of the examples that we've done so far. The first around reducing costs. So we've, as a collective, we looked at joining services where we can. Working in clusters has been a big opportunity to reduce costs. With regards to protecting interests, that's coming from working with closely across the industry more generally, and particularly with the government on its own resource and waste strategy. We also have managed to build out our clout and maximise our clout. Given the size of Kent, we collect recycling and waste for over 1.5 million residents across the whole of Kent. So that's roughly around 650,000 households across Kent. So a large size in terms of a county. And in terms of bringing in external funding, I'll give some examples in future slides, but we've brought in something around 10 million to support councils' collection services and frontline services, which is a tremendous effort across the partnership, and I'll expand on that shortly. In terms of the structure, so you've got an idea and context for the partnership. We have something known as the members board. That's traditionally speaking the councillors across the 13 councils who represent the resource, recycling, waste and environment portfolios across those 13 councils. They meet 3 times a year, start, middle, end of the year, to drive our own strategy. Below that, we have something known as the Officer Advisory Group, again meeting 3 times a year, traditionally speaking, probably about 4 to 6 weeks ahead of the members board to consider reports and so on. And below that, we have 3 project groups, one on communications, one on health and safety, and one on street scene. The street scene, traditionally speaking, has looked at litter and fly tipping and how we can improve that across the whole of Kent. More recently, we've had a new group set up known as the Kent Environmental Crime Practitioners Working Group. That group is essentially the frontline staff that deal with fly tipping on a day-to-day basis. So the enforcement officers, what we recognise with the existing structure is we didn't necessarily have a forum for them to share intelligence on fly tipping. The way councils work is, and what we're trying to work towards is actually the the benefits of sharing intelligence on fly tipping is actually the norm. It's something that is in place as part of the structure that in our approach and our tool to tackle fly tipping. And also we've got an annual conference. There's probably two reasons as to why we've got an annual conference. First, it gives us the chance to showcase the good work that we do as a partnership on a yearly basis. But the second point is also it kind of enables us to anticipate what's going to be coming our way in terms of local authorities, and particularly as a partnership. We bring in speakers across the industry, including government and so on. And like I say, as I mentioned, just with regards to their own strategy and what that might mean for us as local authorities, it's been a really useful tool for us. I thought I'd just share this slide, which provides a bit of context again and a bit of history as to the collection services across Kent. Quite a few years ago, 10 years ago, the councils in the east side of Kent, so those 4 councils outlined there, they had the first opportunity to really take forward some element of joint working. And that was done in the sense of combining, or at least looking at a consistent collection method. That includes food recycling on a weekly basis, dry recycling on a fortnightly basis, with residual on a fortnightly basis, and then a charge garden waste service, which was opt-in. That sounds fairly simplistic, but actually to get those 4 councils to commit to working together took quite some time. But since then, what we've seen is the Mid Kent councils learn from the East Kent experience and take forward their own respective cluster as those 3 councils, again trying to fit in line with the consistency of those collections. So across Kent, you're beginning to see some familiar service if you're moving across the county. And more recently, we've had South West Kent take forward a very similar joint service, again based on the same principles of the collection service. And also, probably a few years ago now, Gravesham Borough Council, they're a direct service organisation, so slightly different with regards to not necessarily needing a contract, but they benefited from DCLG funding. They essentially enabled to gain funding to secure a weekly food recycling service. And then a few years later, reduced their residual service from a weekly to a fortnightly, and that enabled them to align with the other councils across Kent. I should say Dartford and Sevenoaks, they've had opportunities to change, but they've listened to their residents as to what service they provide, and at the moment they're providing a weekly service with no food recycling. So the majority of those councils across Kent are providing a consistent service. Probably it won't go as far as having the same colour bins. That's probably one of the things that isn't the same. But if you're moving across the councils, you understand the core materials that are expected to be recycled along with the food, and the idea that the residual waste is on a fortnightly basis. Thought useful to share who pays into the partnership, so you have that awareness again. There's probably two strands of budget, if you like. The core budget, which essentially funds myself, a projects officer, our on costs, memberships, the annual conference itself, along with meeting rooms and so on. There is a contribution of just under 6k per district, and an overall contribution from the county council of 69,000. County council made that decision based upon match funding the total amount districts have contributed into that, mainly due to the fact that the sizes of their respective budgets are that much different. As a disposal authority, they have so much more in the way of funding, so therefore they felt it appropriate to match fund what districts had put into the partnership. And then we have the projects budget, just under 10k each, pretty much equal contribution across the 13 councils. Again, I'll expand on what that money brings in. It enables us to match fund and bring in that external funding that I briefly touched upon already. So the next 3 slides really give you an indication of what those project groups I talked about deliver. So as I mentioned, one of the big things we try to do as a partnership is try to make sure that our money goes, or stretch our money in terms of our budget. What we've done over the past few years has really been successful is bringing in external funding. There's probably three separate projects here just to mention. The first, with regards to the metals campaign there on the top left, we managed to really engage with AluPro, which is a trade body focused on metals recycling and trying to maximize those recycling items within the service. We managed to partner up with them, both match funding a project across the whole of Kent. So that saw a 60k investment from AluPro and an equal contribution from the partnership to deliver 2 rounds of leaflet deliveries across the whole of Kent over a 6-week period. This was a little bit before the time of social media, so this was more the traditional way of communicating with residents at that time. But what we saw is actually some really positive results. We saw a 9% increase in metals recycling over the campaign period compared to the previous year, which was a real benefit for us as a partnership. More recently, over the last couple of years, we've also looked at kind of maximising food recycling services. Whilst the majority of the councils have this service, we took forward a residual waste audit a few years ago across the whole of Kent, and what we found was about a third of the residual waste was food waste, food recycling. So there was an opportunity there to just simply provide instructions and help nudge residents' behaviour to do the right thing, because the bin's essentially there to be used. We did that in a way of particularly bin stickers. So again, this is underpinned on national good practice led by RAP. We combined it with social media messaging along with delivering roadshows, really trying to benefit of food recycling. And those, in terms of the outcomes of that particular campaign, we saw a 6% increase in food recycling, which was positive. But we also saw a change in the residual waste. We actually saw a reduction in residual waste of 4%. So again, it had the desired impact. Residents will recognise they needed to place the food in their recycling bin, but also therefore that was reducing the amount in their residual bin. So a successful campaign. The next steps is obviously continuing to reinforce that behaviour, because as we know with communications, we have to continually engage with our residents and support them in terms of doing the right things with their resource recycling and so on. And the third campaign here that I mentioned is, again, about a year or so ago, we worked with the likes of RAP, Marks and Spencer, and again, AluPro, again, given we'd had a good track record on the previous campaign, and brought in something around the lines of 110,000 pound into the partnership. And again, we invested something like 70k into this particular project. Again, it saw a number of leaflet drops, vehicle livery, social media ads as well. And as part of that campaign, over the same campaign period, we saw a 4% increase compared to the previous year. So that's really a helpful opportunity for us to build upon our recycling services, and we continue to do so as well. Health and safety project group, there's probably 2 elements I just wanted to share with you guys actually. One of the things that you may recall probably a few years ago, local authorities had HSE kind of come around and do inspections on services and so on. And one of the things that we identified as this group is actually, could we raise the standards with regards to health and safety? Not necessarily replace what councils already have in place, but just add another layer of knowledge, if you like. And there's a couple of things that kind of was really helpful in that. The first is obviously we kind of upskilled our staff across the partnership, but also enabled staff to actually meet their equivalents across the partnership, across the 13 councils, which was really helpful, because that enabled them to build those relationships to say, actually, we understand that you're having this experience. We've had that same experience previously. So you're learning as a collective across the 13 councils. And I must say a special thanks to David for actually help facilitate some of those workshops as in his IOSH role, but he also worked with the likes of APSI and CIWM as well over the last couple of years. The other element of this, I just wanted to highlight, again, linking back to the Resident Comms project group, is the Stop Drops campaign, which we delivered across the whole of Kent. This has come off the back of BIFA's campaign, Stop Drops, which is DROP stands for Driving Recklessly on Pavements. What we had recognised, BIFA had led on this campaign, in particular Dave West, who I know is a member of IOSH, so special thanks to him, is actually across the whole of Kent. This isn't a BIFA thing, it's an issue for many councils across up and down the country. And one of the things that we really welcome from BIFA, and particularly in Dave, was actually this can be shared across councils, across contractors, and particularly helpful for us as a group of 13 councils who've had various number of contractors, including Serco, Amy at the time, Veolia, and so on. Actually, for us to then come together and say, actually, we can deliver this campaign and showcase what the real life experiences that we're having to actually deal with, and particularly around the premise of the campaign was really around trying to make residents that are, well, for whatever reason, behind one of our vehicles on any given day, to stop and think, actually, do I really need to race past that collection crew? Let's at least take our time, be safe with driving around our crews, and not to get frustrated, because essentially they're just doing their day job at the best as best as they can. So that had really good reach, in particular, not just locally but nationally as well, which was positive to hear, and it kind of resonated. What we kind of saw is the perception, particularly in the comments of these, is actually the shift isn't about complaining about the councils and the services, but actually recognizing and appreciating the services in such difficult climate. So that was a really useful campaign that we delivered. We also have the Street Scene Project Group, as I mentioned, generally speaking, tackling litter and fly tipping. One of the things we did over the last couple of years is really piggyback on national campaigns led by Keep Britain Tidy. Obviously, they do stuff, particularly around their Great British September Clean and Spring Clean, almost on an annual basis. But we wanted to go one step further. We developed our own Keep Kent Clean initiative and deliver that at least 2 to 3 times a year, which essentially is kind of bringing on communities to and really fostering that community spirit. To get involved and help keep our county clean and take pride in where we live is one of the key issues, and we deliver those kind of initiatives regularly throughout the year. The second part, and this comes back to being quite innovative, is one of the things we experienced over the last couple of years is, and again, as our kind of reputation as the Garden of England, one of the things we recognise is litter along the higher speed roads was a real issue for us, driving in from Dover and into the country and so on. So we kind of engaged with Highways England, along with the likes of Hubbub, who are like a charity, a behaviour change charity, focused on communications. And we kind of got together in a room and said, what can we do to tackle litter along the highways, and how can we change that behaviour in any way? So between us, what we did as a collective, as a partnership, said, look, we want to commit to this project. We want to commit 10K. Can we bring in external funding of that nature? So Hubbub came to the table with an equal amount, so did Highways England, and then that enabled us to bring in the likes of Roadchef, Shell and Costa Express. They were particularly keen to come on board because they were looking at it from their motorway services perspective, knowing that there's litter along those areas, and then as you leave the services, you then see litter kind of increases. People tend to chuck litter out of their vehicle once they've used it. So we wanted to work together on that. And again, it was just a pilot to showcase some of that. You'll see some of these kind of what was known as reward return schemes. The idea is you return your coffee cup and in your plastic bottle with an idea of getting a voucher to spend within store. And what we saw is actually the results of that is actually visually the bins, if they're so colourful and really hard to not miss, basically, you're more likely to get people using those, which sounds really obvious. But RoadChef took that away and thought, well, actually, we potentially could implement that more broadly across their other service stations across the country. So that's one of the things they took away from that. And one of the other areas that I've mentioned, particularly of the Kent Environmental Crime Practitioners Working Group that I talked about, is working with the likes of Kent Police and National Farmers Union on delivering joint days of action. They're essentially days of action which are underpinned by intelligence. They take some time in terms of gathering that intelligence on certain suspected fly tippers across the county, and the idea is to have a day of action which hits them hard. Could be seizing vehicles, stopping vehicles with Kent Police, issuing them with fines, giving them opportunities as well. So there's an education side of things, giving them opportunities to show they've got the respective licenses they need to carry waste across the county. And that was something we delivered probably a number of years ago, but now is considered the norm for us. So we do these quite regularly, not just as a collective of councils, but individually in hotspot areas as well. So that's something that we work quite closely with Kent Police on going forward. I probably won't cover COVID-19 too much because I know that's been covered as part of a previous webinar, but I just thought I'd showcase some of the things that we've had to do as part of the last year or so. Without doubt, we've noticed a big appreciation with regards to frontline staff, which is really something we wanted to build on and really kind of continue as over the summer. Without doubt, the WISH guidance initially was really something that supported us and enabled us to deliver our services safely and effectively. We also saw there was, during the start of the pandemic, and particularly in the lockdown, we had to make quick decisions, quick judgments with regards to how we wanted to prioritise services, not just locally, but across the whole of the county, and what the impacts of that might be, as well as managing the demands, particularly the tonnages. So what was clear with people being at home on furlough and so on, the tonnages in the home definitely increased. So for us as collection authorities and finding our ways to collect that and then also dispose of that was a particular challenge at the time. We also had the county council temporarily close its household waste recycling centres. Again, at the time of the lockdown, that was deemed a non-essential, not an essential journey. So therefore, that was the decision then. And also we'd looked at managing our own costs. And as you can imagine, with the additional pressures, we're seeing additional costs. So we're keeping and monitoring those costs throughout this whole pandemic and reporting those back to government accordingly. But as I say, we really wanted to build on that. So I've got really wanted to build on the appreciation side of things. So what we did probably at the start of the summer, we identified a couple of ways to really do that. We kind of wanted to do that in a way which built upon the kind of clap for key workers at the time on the Thursday evenings. So we did that by producing 3 separate videos. So I'll be sharing 3 of those just now, so you get an insight into how they are. The first one here. The first video, just for information and awareness, is just more about providing the residents with a bit of shock as to what the collection crews do. So real insight into the amount of waste that's being collected, the amount of recycling that's being collected. So I'll run this for you now. So the second video was kind of released around August time, and it tries to give an insight into a day of a life of a collection or street scene operative. So I'll run this video too. And the final video leads into early September. The reason behind that is it kind of linked to RAP's own Recycle Week, which fitted alongside this overarching theme of appreciating frontline staff. So I'll just run through this. This is more of an emotive piece, so I'll share this as well.
Do people ever say thank you? Without you, we wouldn't be able to see past the end of our pavements, to lift our feet for all this mess. Old carpets, dead things, fridge freezers and mattresses. Comic book graffiti words scrubbed clean while the world comes to safe in their beds. The things you have to collect. Whatever is waiting in the sharp heat or the damp, our little town's rubbish in piles and pockets, those stubborn weeds that push their way through the concrete. You catch a piece of falling gum, aren't we disgusting, us humans? When summer makes the beach a graveyard for picnics, the chaos of bin bags that the seagulls rip, or what the sea brings in. In the traffic, you are patient. No time to moan, hold your nose, you just do it. A magician in a 26-ton dust cart. Lightness of heart and hard graft. What would the world look like without you? This morning isn't quiet, because it never is. But today you have an audience. Look. They are waving at the window in awe of you. They are not worried about privilege or what they pay for what you do. And when the clapping stops, you keep on keeping on. She says, you only have to say good morning once, and it sticks. A smile, that's what being human is.
So I just also share a couple more slides with regards to partnership performance, so you get an indication as to what that looks like. With regards to residual household waste per household, we've seen a 32% reduction in that, which is really positive. Combined with not just the service changes, but also the communications that we've mentioned. With regards to recycling performance and the amount sent to energy from waste and landfill, there's the graph there. We've also seen an increase in recycling over the last 13 or so years, and then obviously the amount sent to landfill is a real positive for us here in Kent. So I just thought I'd give you an indication as to who the partnership works with. We've got formal memberships with the likes of Larac, Nordo and Recoup. But over the last number of years, we've worked with all these partners on various projects and so on, which I've touched upon already. In terms of reputation, so again, an insight. Given all the work that I've just kind of covered as well, it's as a partnership we're seen as a leading local authority partnership too. I suppose the final point is really around what's next for us. Without doubt, the government's own resource and waste strategy and the kind of key policies for us really around the introduction of the EPR, extended producer responsibility, the introduction of deposit return schemes, DRS, and the consistency agenda for household recycling and waste, which we've done a lot of work on over the last 10 years or so on that. So we're in a good place in terms of that. But obviously with the likes of EPR and DRS, understand what those impacts are, that's going to be a key kind of thing for us to focus on. We also have our own strategy. As I mentioned, our own strategy has been refreshed a couple of times, but it's now due to be refreshed again, which I'm currently in the process of doing over the next 6 months or so. Without doubt, reducing carbon emissions is a continued focus for us. Most councils, I think if all councils have committed to reducing carbon emissions in some way, it's now about implementing that and taking forward action on that over the next couple of years. Communications remains a key point for us, not just maximising recycling, but as I touched on before, reducing waste is important, so is reusing. And also the streets and issues like litter and fly tipping remain a continued focus for us going forward. Just to let you know as well, our annual report is just been kind of agreed by members, so that'll be made available over the next month or so. I can of course share that with David, and you can share with the respective members of this forum as well, so you can have that to hand over the next couple of weeks. That's pretty much me done. Thank you again for your time, really appreciate it.
Paldeep, many thanks for that.
No,
I'd like to pick up with a few questions, obviously. I actually dropped out for 5 minutes. My link disappeared, but I think I've got the questions all set up for you. In terms of the number of questions here, the food waste, where does the food waste go? What process does it follow through?
Yeah, so it goes to an investable composting facility within Kent. So one of the things that Kent County Council have done is look to invest into a facility, and a new facility is going to be set up, or it's on the cards to be kind of in place either next month or that started this year. But that's where it goes at the moment within Kent in Westmoreland.
So that creates electricity?
It's composted.
Composted.
Yes. We have an energy from waste facility which handles the rest of our residual waste. Right. That is in Allington in Maidstone within Kent, so again central Kent, and that avoids the amount of residual waste being sent to landfill. So
when it goes to for energy for waste, do you get, because this follows from a question from a previous webinar, do you get details of how much electricity is produced and how much is potentially the national grid?
Our county council colleagues would have that information to hand. I think the last time I asked it would essentially be enough to provide electricity for at least 3 councils, Sevenoaks, Tunbridge and Malling and Tunbridge Wells, all fairly near to the plant itself.
That's all the households in those councils.
Yeah.
That's pretty good, that.
I'll double check it if there's information you might need, because our county council have that details readily available as well.
Yeah. So I asked a question about anaerobic digestion, about food waste going there. How's that from that in-vessel composting? How's that? Is that the same process, just different terminology?
Yeah.
So that should pick up, Glenn, that should pick up your question quite happily. How many, in terms of the food waste itself, you mentioned you had about 1/3 of the waste was actually in food waste, yet you only made a 4% reduction on the food waste. That's still a battle to be had then, is it, for the food waste?
Yeah, and as just picking up on that, the residual waste audits we took place was probably around 2015. And as I mentioned, yeah, we found, despite the services being offered to residents, that for one reason or another, food waste was still ending up within the residual waste service. That could be a number of reasons, and that's tough to really kind of get out of just the audits. But like I say, one of the things we put in place is that campaign, but we recognise there's still a lot of work to be done on that area. We've already committed to doing the same exercise next year, so we'll be doing residual waste audits again next year with a view of seeing whether there's been that change, that desired impact. So much has changed over the last 5 years. People are a lot more conscious about kind of the spend of food and so on, and using food. So I'm anticipating there's going to be a change, but without doubt, if it was just focused on kind of trying to improve the tonnages, and it's based on weight, food would be an area of focus, but we also want to focus on the quality of recyclates as well. So,
this year's data is going to be interesting, with businesses not working, people not using fast food outlets. So you must have seen a difference within, you must have seen an increase in all waste areas of waste collection in the past 12 months. Obviously with trade waste services struggling.
Yeah, no, we did a bit of a mini exercise over the summer just to see how much tonnage was kind of being managed within our systems. And I think we kind of, like you say, all areas of tonnage were increased, whether it be residual waste, recycling, dry recycling, and food and garden. But we saw something around 20% increase compared to the previous year. So without doubt, I'm kind of interested to do that exercise on the residual waste audits to see where our opportunities lie for the future in terms of communications, service changes, and so on.
Okay, going back to your general composting for the garden waste across the county, obviously, I assume you promote home composting first rather than collection?
Yeah, exactly that. That's become a really key issue for us over the number of years of re-emphasising the waste hierarchy. Sometimes there can be so much focus on recycling, but actually there's ways of reducing waste and reusing waste, and home composting is something we support and champion to our residents, particularly in the start of the year when things begin to grow and so on.
In terms of the DROPS campaign, which is DROPS, the driving
recklessly on pavements.
Thank you. How much support have you had from the police and the Chief Constable in Kent?
Yeah, really good. We managed to engage with our local police, the Kent Police team, and they managed to do a couple of things for us really and support us. This again links to the work that Dave West was doing, because he was doing something similar across the whole of the country. But we managed to get the right contact within Kent Police to set up an internal system which enabled councils to essentially capture CCTV or capture vehicle footage, along with generate witness statements, and then submit that to the Kent Police team for them to assess and then decide whether there would be any enforcement action on that. So that could be a warning letter to the person driving concerned, or far worse, depending on the incidents. So one of the things that the health and safety group are doing at the moment is kind of monitoring that and evaluating that, because one of the things we struggled on was having base data. We just knew it was an issue, but we didn't quite have the data in hand. So we're probably in a bit of a learning situation at the moment in terms of gathering that data in order to then track progress, really, if you like. In an ideal world, we wouldn't want any of these issues happening ever, really. So that's the aim.
Okay, interesting about different recycling rates and demographics in the boroughs. Obviously, with the recent COVID-19 data mentioning Swale and Thanet, and it's in the public domain about how their records are going up. And having visited, you know, I do have holidays and breaks in Kent, as you may know, seeing the difference in terms of, I mean, I saw your, I think one of the videos, you had Broadstairs Beach, didn't you? And having, you know, a beautiful beach, but without being rude, the borough has got problems. There are, if you walk around the seafronts, there are broken seats, etc. Obviously, the issues around Swale. Do you find you get different recycling rates in different boroughs that correspond to that?
Yeah, I think we do, and a lot of it's based, like you mentioned, on demographics. And one of the things that we do as a partnership is trying to gain insights in that, and then support our councils, particularly as partnership staff. That's one of the things that I take kind of accountability on, in the sense of understanding the local issues, understanding where we can work together, and then trying to support the councils on those. As you say, there's opportunities where residents have the services in place, but it isn't quite, for whatever reason, the message isn't quite resonating with residents. But also there's tweaks that we can do as councils to ensure that they then are nudged in the right way and behave in the way we would like them to maximise the resource and so on.
Okay, on the nice, happy resort. Nice questions there. A gentleman's come up with a lovely question here, Cannon, and I'm going to expand on the question. It's about nappy waste or diaper, as he's one of our international delegates. And I'll go further for incontinence pads. There's general waste all that goes into, does it?
Yeah, at the moment it does. It was one of the issues actually we were touched upon with our own resident comms group as a contaminant, because at the moment we're finding in certain areas across Kent that's for some reason being placed in our recycling, which it baffles me, to be fair. But yeah, it's at the moment it's placed within, or should be placed within, the residual waste stream, which then gets sent onto that energy from waste facility that I talked about, and produces energy.
In a local, OTA, in a local council, if you had to plough resource into fly tipping, would you rather invest more on public enlightenment or tilt towards punitive measures? I think you touched on education, didn't you, again? Yeah,
we're doing a bit of both, really. We've had the county council recognise this as an issue, and they've invested just over £500,000 into tackling fly tipping. And as part of that, they've included a segment of that funding to be spent on education. So really understanding residents' duty of care when it comes to disposing of waste responsibility. So the standard things of if it sounds too good to be true in terms of disposing of waste, it probably generally is. Making sure that you pay by cards, not cash only jobs. You want to make sure that obviously you get a receipt. You make sure you ask for a waste carrier's license. So all these hints and tips we want to really kind of educate our residents. So when it gets to the point they're in a situation where they're being confronted or being approached with these jobs, actually they already know the sorts of questions they want to ask, and therefore stop fly tipping at source. Because if the fly tippers don't get the waste, then it won't end up in a country lane and so on in other areas across Kent. So definitely a combination of both enforcement in terms of the fly tipping, but also the education of our residents, which we're still a long way to go, but it's something that we continue to have a focus on.
Can I go back to the training? I haven't actually asked any follow-up. In terms of the training, the IOSH WMG training package, thinking forward now 3-4 years, are people still, has the knowledge they gain been retained, do you think?
I would say so, yeah. We've kind of used it as an opportunity to, like I say, mentioned before, as to raise the standards with regards to health and safety. But as with everything, certain colleagues leave, and then all of a sudden you see a fresh batch of people. So we might have to potentially contact you to look at doing some sort of refresher in the near future.
I mean, in fairness, a number of authorities have, because I discussed something at an IOSH branch meeting. It's on the webinar for Mid-Shires a couple of weeks ago. People want to go and look for it on the IOSH website. without relaunching it, but the big issue is competency, and it's the thing we try to pick up on is those people directly supervising the people doing the collection need to understand the job. And you mentioned on the WISH guidance, etc., and the COVID WISH guidance, all the guidance produced by industry, isn't it? So really all we're trying to do is bring to life and give people a chance to understand the industry guidance without being sidetracked with phone calls, meetings. You're in there, discuss it. And for me, I think, and in fairness, the people that took part, diverse audience from all around the county, it was brilliant. And I think we are looking to do it again. So I'll roll it out further. So again, thanks for that. And if people want to come and contact the EWMG, you can do through myself or through the IOSH links. Question from Rob Hewer here. This is I'm going to ask the question. I may make some comments going through the questions. I think there's still a lack of understanding and need for public to have deeper insight in the processing of waste. How is waste separated from black sacks by hand? That's the first point. And I think I go in to say that generally sacks by themselves go in a bin and they don't get split out. Do they either go into landfill, they go to energy from waste in its entirety?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of things I want to probably mention there, because this really resonates with something else that we do in terms of a project. We have something known as the End Destinations publication, which essentially really showcases, or is a transparent document which highlights where exactly waste ends up, recycling ends up, and a part of that, and we touched upon the residual side of things. So yeah, you're quite right with regards to black bag waste, or if it's in that bin, it's not going to be separated in any way. So if there's recycling items in there, unfortunately they are potentially going to be lost, because they're likely to be contaminated with all sorts of other bad items that you don't really want to collect. But they get sent to transfer stations, a transfer station across Kent, and then they get sent to the Allington from Waste facility. But I mentioned the materials end destination for a number of reasons. One, because we've taken that forward in highlighting where our material ends up across the county, not just across the county, but across the UK and also abroad. Given the fact that there is a real emphasis on public confidence, and off the back of that, we're looking to develop a short number of videos focused on each of the respective materials, so residual waste, food waste, plastics, metals, glass, and so on, and really develop videos which pick up right from your household all the way to the journey from that. So whether it goes to a reprocessor for the recycling materials, whether it goes to that composting facility for food and so on, and then also the residual waste that goes to the energy from waste facility as well. So again, that should help with the public confidence, because we think that's going to be a really useful tool to improve our own performance.
I'd like to pick up on Rob's second point on there. He mentioned about how is waste separated from recycling bags. So I'll try and rephrase the question from that. So those households who don't have bins, and I think you've moved to wheel bins for most areas for your recycling.
We have, yeah.
How do those like flats, etc., and whether you can't have a wheel bin, do you actually collect any recycling in bags in some areas?
In some areas, there's only one council that does bag collections, and that's Sevenoaks District Council, on a weekly basis. That is recycling as well. So yes to collecting. Usually it's bulked up at the transfer station, as I mentioned. And with regards to recycling, we'll get sent to a materials recycling facility, which the one for Sevenoaks gets sent to Viridor, Crayford. So right next door to the council, and yeah, you're quite right. There'll be operatives there that will rip open the bags, and then it'll go for an automated machine to be separated and so on to the various kind of materials and so on.
I'm going to blame the great British public here, which is probably a number of our audience here. If people weren't hung up on this thing about curbside collection, we could make massive leaps and strides, I think, by improving operative safety, reducing costs, by things like systems in Spain and Netherlands, where they've got communal collection systems where you take your recycling there. Because to actually split up bags in a MRF, materials reclamation facility, that creates potential contamination, doesn't it, as well as manual handling issues?
Yeah, no, I agree. And I suppose we're just in the situation where we are at the moment, really. That is the process for not just us in Kent, but I'm sure for the majority of councils across the country. But yeah, you're right, there's probably issues there that we could probably do more effectively or efficiently. Or just
But
whether residents would want to move in that way, I don't know, is another question, I suppose.
I think we all got to do our part, haven't we? I think we always want someone else to do something, but we aren't prepared to do it ourselves, because I mean, someone's got to live near a bin. Of course, we don't design new developments, but there is going to be massive house building. But there's about 5 million homes in the next 10, 15 years. These we could be designing now for more sustainable collection systems, couldn't we? Automated systems.
Yeah, no, I agree. Definitely one to look at, I think.
So the last question on the list here is, what challenges do you face in separating mixed waste, and how do you know when households are violating proper waste segregation?
So I think the key issue is contamination with regards to recycling waste. We're quite fortunate in Kent in the sense that the local authorities have a real understanding, again, working with their collection crews and so on, and their contractors, as to where the areas that they might have issues with. So if they're particular streets and so on, they can delve into that detail and then put in place bespoke kind of contamination kind of education awareness, if that makes sense. So if they recognise, for example, as I touched upon already, we were seeing nappies being recycled or placed in a recycling stream, when clearly that's not a recycled item. Particular councils, in the one that kind of springs to mind in Maidstone, is they were managed to delve into where exactly that area is, and therefore provide them with the education from a resident's perspective, and then track the tonnage and so on, and see whether it's had the desired impacts.
Those great videos you've got, any chance of sending some links on to myself and Ben, and we can upload them to the EWMG website to link in, because they're informative and great, and people might want to use them. Those were the major questions I've picked up from those. I thank all those people in the room for asking questions. For me, a local question there for local knowledge. The wonderful place called Botany Bay, which has got famous names. The water processing plant in the north end of Botany Bay, is that ever going to be closed and upgraded?
I'm not too sure about that one, I'm afraid. I'm gonna have to pass on that, sorry.
As a tourist who goes down there, you walk along the beach and this long pipe, you think there's something strange here. My vice chair says that of all the best resorts he's been to in Britain, it's Broadstairs. He loves it. So
that's good to hear.
It's a great place. I mean, it's fond memories down there, and I thank everyone for listening. I thank you for your time. I hope to catch up with you again. And Kent is the Garden of England. It's a great place, and it isn't just put your foot down and get to Dover, although you can't. You'll get stopped if you try that right now.
Yeah, stuck in traffic more like, yeah.
Indeed. Thanks again, Paldeep. In the usual unsocial way, we're going to click leave and everyone will disappear overnight. But I thank you again and all the best.
No worries. Thank you for your time. Cheers.
Bye-bye.